Welcome, everyone. I'm Scott Wiener. I have the honor of representing San Francisco and northern San Mateo County in the California State Senate, and I am the lead author of Senate Bill 519, along with a diverse array of senators and assembly members from around the state of differing political perspectives who are co-authoring this important criminal justice and mental health reform bill. I want to thank you today for joining us here in the Rose Garden, where we're going to be hearing from veterans and healthcare professionals and former law enforcement officers about the need to decriminalize psychedelics and to pass SB 519. The reason that we're here right next to the Vietnam War Memorial is to honor our veterans for their sacrifice to our nation. We need to do so much more to support and care for our veterans who have put their lives on the line for our country. Sadly, we lose on average 18 veterans every single day to suicide. Every day, 18 veterans in this country commit suicide. That's unacceptable, and we need to do more, and we have an opportunity to do more. In honor of these veterans who have struggled and who have lost their lives to suicide, I want to invite everyone to take a moment of silent reflection in their memory and in their honor. Thank you. We're here today to talk about solutions, real solutions for our veterans, real solutions for Californians of all backgrounds struggling with trauma, with depression, with anxiety, with addiction. Psychedelics have shown huge promise in treating mental health and substance use disorders and have been a lifeline for so many, have literally saved lives and are saving lives as we are today. And it's time to stop criminalizing these substances. Senate Bill 519 decriminalizes the possession and personal use of certain psychedelics, including psilocybin, MDMA, LSD, DMT, mescaline, and ibogaine, only for people 21 and older. It's very important because, and I want to say there's been a lot of deliberate misinformation about this bill, and we need to be very, very clear. This bill is not about children. This is about people 21 and older. This is about possession for personal use so people can take care of their own needs. Mental health is a critical reason to decriminalize psychedelics, but let's be clear that there's another reason, and that is that the racist war on drugs, which has fueled mass incarceration and torn apart communities, particularly communities of color, but not made us any safer, the war on drugs needs to end. For 50 years, we've taken the approach to drug use of just incarcerating as many people as possible, and we have had no benefit from that approach, but it's been very expensive and very destructive to communities. This bill is one step in the direction of ending the failed war on drugs. We know that California, we will be the biggest state to do this, but we're not in the lead. Oregon voters voted last year to decriminalize possession of all drugs. The Maine House of Representatives just voted to decriminalize possession of all drugs. Oakland, Santa Cruz, Washington, D.C., Somerville, Massachusetts have all voted locally to decriminalize the possession of psychedelics. Portugal has successfully decriminalized possession and personal use of all controlled substances, going much further than this legislation. And since they adopted this, HIV rates and overdose death rates have plummeted in Portugal. We know that people are currently, sometimes these drug debates get framed as, oh, we're going to let people use drugs. People are using drugs right now, and we want them to be able to use drugs in a safe way, where they're not in the shadows, where they're not stigmatized. There's already an underground community that are using these substances, that are helping people get access, whether veterans or other people who have experienced trauma, and helping people get access. But right now, we often have to send people to another country to get psychedelic treatment because they would be branded a criminal here in the U.S. So imagine that, combat veterans who go to war for our country, come back home suffering trauma from that service, and they can't get the treatment that they need here. They have to go to another country. That is unconscionable. The science is clear. Study after study, including recent clinical trials, have shown that these psychedelics have huge benefit for people suffering from mental health conditions. A recent study associated with the FDA showed that MDMA therapy combined with talk therapy for people with PTSD, 75% of the participants not only improved, they no longer had a PTSD diagnosis. MDMA-assisted therapy has been branded as a quote-unquote breakthrough therapy by the FDA. In 2 different clinical trials, psilocybin, mushrooms, was shown to reduce symptoms in patients with treatment-resistant depression. A Johns Hopkins study showed a decrease in depression and anxiety in cancer patients using psilocybin, and another showed that it helps people stop smoking. There's also research indicating that LSD may be an effective treatment for anxiety and for alcoholism. So with us today, we have several veterans who will share their story. I want to just say it's so inspiring to have this coalition of veterans behind this bill. They're working so hard. They're just talking to assembly member after senator after assembly member one by one, making the case, because sometimes people come in with certain preconceptions and stereotypes about what psychedelics are about. And the veterans, as well as our parents of kids who have struggled with addiction, have just been doing yeoman's work in helping to spread the word and educate. So I'd like to invite to start out several veterans who are part of our coalition, Julianna Mercer, Jesse Gould, and Jose Martinez, who are with us here today. So I'll invite them to come up, and then we'll hear from a few of my amazing colleagues who are here. And so let's have the veterans come up.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon. My name is Jesse Gould, and I'm the founder of Heroic Hearts Project, which is a co-sponsor of California Bill SB 519. I could have never imagined being in this position today advocating for psychedelic medicines, but I've always followed my heart and intuition, and that has consistently led me to a fulfilling life of service. Before the military, I worked as an investment banker on Wall Street. I decided to enlist in the Army to give back and to serve this great country. I found community and purpose as an airborne ranger, and I developed as a leader as a non-commissioned officer. I made a pledge to leave no soldier behind. I first found psychedelics out of necessity. Having tried all that was offered to me by military medicine, I was barely hanging on. I turned to psychedelics as a last-ditch effort to survive. And fortunately, it worked amazingly well. Heroic Hearts Project was created to educate and connect my fellow veterans to these effective options. This was nearly 4.5 years ago. And since then, I have been on the front lines of the veteran suicide epidemic. Nearly every day, my team receives messages from veterans who have fallen through the cracks of the system, or from their families who are exhausted and desperate because of the lack of options. It is hard to put into words how much this crisis has decimated the military community, my community. The weight of it all has fallen on individuals and private organizations, many of which are at a breaking point. Just last month, a friend of mine, a veteran, took his own life. He was doing his best to save others, but it came at the expense of his own mental health. We should not have to face this alone in the shadows. I will say this unequivocally. Psychedelics have and will save veteran lives. Just recently, the director of the National Institute of Health praised psychedelics' potential as a therapeutic treatment. This sentiment is echoed by both the FDA and Johns Hopkins University. But veterans are dying today. SB 519 is a compassionate step forward and provides measured hope in a time frame of months, not years, to those that are barely holding on right now. To my fellow veterans that are struggling, I ask that you hold on. You are not alone, and every day we come closer to real solutions. Thank you everyone for their time and for their support of this very important bill. Thank you.
My name is Julianna Mercer. Thank you. My name is Julianna Mercer. I'm a native Californian and a 16-year Marine Corps veteran. I went to both Iraq and Afghanistan, and between those two deployments, I spent 5 years working at the Naval Hospital in San Diego, taking care of our wounded Marines that were coming back with injuries, whether it be missing limbs, brain injuries, post-traumatic stress. Every day, those 5 years, I saw the true cost of our country being at war, to the individual service member, to the families, and to our community. When I left the Marine Corps, I still wanted to continue taking care of my brothers and sisters, so I went into the nonprofit space, working with organizations that help veterans transition successfully from military to civilian. Had a really purposeful life. But one day I found myself without purpose, very lost, and I knew that I needed to do something. I also knew that traditional medicines and pharmaceuticals weren't going to do the trick, because I saw what they did those 5 years at the hospital, and my friends that used these options, and it didn't work. Thankfully, I found plant medicine. I met Heroic Hearts Project. I was able to undergo some sessions with plant medicine. One night of psilocybin therapy, almost 20 years of our country being at war, that grief that I collected completely disappeared, and I got to re-meet my authentic self, and I became joyful and full of love again, and able to continue serving and helping my fellow brothers and sisters transition and be successful in their own civilian lives. As a native Californian, as a veteran, California has the largest number of veterans. We owe it to our veterans to give them access to these life-saving therapies, and that is why I support SB 519. Thank you.
Thank you. In addition to veterans, we have the support of many in the healthcare community, and we're very grateful for that. We are joined here today by Dr. Melody Hayes, who is a physician, anesthesiologist, and enormously knowledgeable about psychedelics and their benefits. So, Doctor.
Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be invited as a clinical expert in psychedelic medicine, but I was like, okay, let's just talk about the science. Let's just talk about the science. And the science is amazing. I am so excited about how we're clinically bringing this medicine to the market. However, I want to actually talk about my own story and why I've given my life to bringing psychedelic medicine to the population. So as a physician, I experienced a massive episode of physician burnout. I had profound anxiety and profound depression. And I was able to get medical treatment with psychedelic medicine, and through that, I just recovered. I was able to return to my work, return to taking care of the patients who I care about, and return to the profession that I love. And when I think about my experience of overwork and overburden, and how that just had me wasting away, really I think about the thousands of physicians and nurses who are now suffering with the trauma of having cared for our nation during this COVID crisis. And the number of them who are holding on by a thread in anxiety and PTSD for taking care of American citizens who while they were dying. And so my hope is that we bring psychedelic medicine accessible to people through the decriminalized form, that we can make access for the same kind of healing and recovery that I have experienced. So that's my story and why I'm here today. Let me tell you a little bit about the clinical science. So Senator Wiener did an excellent job summarizing a lot of the studies that have shown that this is groundbreaking clinical science. So for conditions such as anxiety and depression, psilocybin psilocybin provides profound healing and recovery. And unlike SSRIs, which might take 6 to 8 weeks to be effective, the healing and transformation with psilocybin and other psychedelic medicines can happen in overnight or in a few months. So that's very different. And likewise with PTSD, a lot of our veterans have talked about what it's like to live with PTSD, but let me go into a little bit more detail. People who have PTSD are in a state of constant vigilance. It impairs their ability to work, to be in relationships, and living life itself feels unsafe. They will undergo experiences where they try multiple medications years after years, maybe trying 13 different medications before and not even finding benefit. But clinical research is showing that MDMA in just a 3-month period can provide such profound relief that 60 to 70% of people who undergo MDMA-assisted psychedelic therapy are completely free of the diagnosis. They're healed. They're basically healed. And they're able to be like Jesse here and go on to start amazing organizations like Heroic Hearts that's providing healing and transformation to others. And so by not just providing medical access, but decriminalized access and providing safe methods of accessing these medications for people who are age 21 and above, we can profoundly increase access to health, healing, and recovery. And as an African-American person who knows the toll of the drug war and the effects of race-related trauma in this nation, and as I see and envision us in a healed and reconciled relationship with our history of oppression of people of color, I know that psychedelic medicines are important for helping people of color recover from race-related trauma. I am happy to have taken a day off of work from being in an OR to be present here in Sacramento today, and I'm happy to give my full clinical, professional, and spiritual support to the passage of this bill.
Thank you, Doctor, and thank you for your amazing work. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a really diverse array of co-authors of this bill, which has been really inspiring, and it's been a real team effort to help move this legislation forward. The legislation passed the full state Senate, is about to have its first committee hearing this week, I think tomorrow, in the Assembly. And so we're joined here today by two of our great co-authors, Senator Josh Becker and Assemblymember Evan Low. If the two of you would like to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, and thanks to Scott for arranging this. Just hearing from the veterans is what has motivated so many of us. It was astonishing on the Senate floor of the folks who got up and spoke, which was many, how many of them cited their conversations with the veterans and how that opened their eyes to this issue and the importance of this legislation. Just to mention a couple things that need to be said. Again, this is research from top medical institutions that have shown significant benefits for both mental health and for treating substance abuse. This is not legalization. This does not decriminalize the sale. And it does create a task force that will make recommendations to the legislature regarding what regulatory systems should be used for these medicines and for the personal use going forward. So I think it's well thought through. I want to commend my colleague, the author, and just being here and listening to the advocates, I think is reason enough for us to support it and to move this bill forward. And I'm really excited to be a co-author that have passed the Senate and now on to the Assembly.
Good afternoon. My name is Evan Low, serving in the State Assembly. And first of all, thank you very much, Senator Wiener, for allowing me to co-author this legislation as it now heads into the Assembly. But why I'm also here is my area of jurisdiction is chairing the Business and Professions Committee, which has oversight of the California Medical Board, the Board of Registered Nursing, and the Department of Consumer Affairs. And our primary jurisdiction is consumer protection and advocacy. And I speak as a co-author of this legislation and thank the advocates for your courage and helping to speak truth to your experiences and to help allow more of an opportunity for individuals to get the type of healing that they need. And this is the type of work that Senator Wiener has done moving forward in the legislature, and we look forward to the continued success as it moves into the Assembly. And we want to reemphasize the importance of more Californians telling the story about the importance of helping to share their stories and about the specific needs of this particular bill that would help everyday Californians. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblymember and Senator, for your partnership. And then our final speaker today is sometimes I think there's a broad brush that all law enforcement must oppose every criminal justice reform, and that's not true. There are so many voices within law enforcement who see firsthand every day what our failed policies around the war on drugs and mass incarceration, what that's done to our communities, and understand the need for change. So we're joined here today by Lieutenant Diane Goldstein with LEAP, the Law Enforcement Action Partnership, which has just been a really strong voice in favor of this bill and in favor of other progressive criminal justice reform policies. Lieutenant.
Thank you very much, Senator. My name's Diane Goldstein, and I spent 21 years as a police officer in Redondo Beach, focusing on protecting the health and safety of my community. I'm also the executive director of the Law Enforcement Action Partnership, a nonprofit of current, former, and retired criminal justice professionals that believe that the war on drugs is an abject failure. I've managed gang units. I've been heavily involved in violence reduction and ran a special investigations unit that included our narcotics team. In my field of work, I've seen how destructive, outdated drug laws can be to our communities. That's why I'm urging the Assembly to vote yes on Senate Bill 519 to decriminalize psychedelics for all Californians. Decriminalizing psychedelics will allow law enforcement to prioritize serious threats to public safety and redirect resources away from ineffective drug control strategies to strategies that actually work and are grounded in evidence-based practices. SB 519 will also lower law enforcement and incarceration costs, which will give our public safety officers more resources to investigate violent crime. Our current system fails to recognize the medical uses of psychedelics and prevents so many of our vulnerable veterans from seeking the care that they need. 83%, let me say that again, 83% of Americans say the drug war has failed. As a career policing professional, I know it has failed because we treat people who use drugs like criminals rather than like patients. Decriminalizing psychedelics through SB 519 will improve community health and safety, will expand our public health system's ability to treat patients who are struggling with their mental health. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to you, Senator.
Thank you, Lieutenant. So that winds up our program. We're happy to answer any questions, either now or on the side, and we appreciate everyone being here today. Great. No questions? Good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for